Hi, and welcome to this month's update on progress for the persistent universe. The UI visual team have been working on the visor vehicle status holograms, which have been extensively rewritten to utilize the new RTT technology developed by the render team. Previously, vehicles displayed on the HUD visor were constructed using the same hierarchy as a separate entity from the vehicle you were viewing. With the introduction of RTT, the vehicle seen on the visor, or MFD, is now actually a re-render of the full vehicle. This means that rather than being an imitation of the target, it's now a true reflection of what's in-world or space, and accurately reflects all the real parts and attachments, like the thrusters and weapons. This was accomplished by building a list of the render nodes that were selectively rendered to a render target. Using a custom material shader, we can apply the color tinting to visualize the damage status of the vehicle parts, whilst avoiding some of the more expensive features of doing a full physically based forward render. This render target of the vehicle can then be rendered whenever the player selects the own or target view on the display. This was hardwired to exist on the helmet visor in 3.0, but in 3.1, you'll be able to enable it on the MFD displays as well. The visor and MFD displays all have their own render targets, which the 2D UI gets displayed on, plus an optional camera that can show a vehicle too. Yes, we have a render target objects rendering other render target objects. It's all very Inception and can be quite confusing working out who's rendering what sometimes. We also use the same RTT technology when rendering the communication system, often referred to as comms. Instead of selectively rendering the vehicle, we actually render the full scene camera of the pilot to a render target so the player can see who they are communicating with. This comms render target, similar to the vehicle visor status holograms, can then be displayed on any given display's render target, whether that is a vehicle's MFD screen, the mobiGlass, or the visor. One thing we're introducing for the 3.1 release is the ability to dictate the camera angle when viewing your vehicle or the focus vehicle. This allows the player to view them from a series of fixed camera angles, such as top, bottom, left side, right side, etc. This is the addition to the live view, which shows the vehicle's orientation from the pilot's perspective. Another piece of new tech we added for 3.0 and are improving for 3.1 is how the vehicle displays are described. Initially, we started with a fixed list of displays, which were available per dashboard, describing each of the displays available. For example, the Gladius pilot seat has one heads-up display and 6 MFD display screens. We have now added the ability to connect additional auxiliary displays. We currently utilize this by connecting the visor display and the 3D radar display. This feature will eventually allow the player to customize their cockpit by allowing them to add or remove auxiliary displays as they desire. When the visor connects to the dashboard, it plugs in as multiple additional screens for the UI to utilize, meaning we can pipe views from the various controllers to these optional visor screens. Some examples would be the target vehicle hologram, the energy view, and the weapon view. The procedural planetary team have continued to make improvements to the planet tech. We added a new way to support multi-channels while improving the color blending and breakup, all of which operate at the same runtime performance cost as the current tech. Transitioning from the ground to orbit is now a much smoother experience thanks to the strides made in color blending. We also separated the ecosystem procedural distribution setup from the rendering channels artist setup, which means that a large number of these changes will be mostly visible on Yellow in the 3.1 release. Finally, we also improved the existing tools to reposition all planetary outposts automatically. The environment team are finalizing the last few pieces of the truck stop exterior and are incorporating the new common element hangars, with work on lighting, polish, and advertising to follow. For interiors, the procedural layout tool is now automatically generating lots of successful layouts for us overnight. This is using only the base library of rooms available, but we are already seeing some unusual and visually diverse layouts. We estimate we've crunched through around 1,000 layouts so far during the initial period of development. Not all have been suitable for use, but it's a good indicator of the amount of variety we can achieve using the tool. We have a number of ships and vehicles approaching the flight ready phase, and the VFX department have been busy adding effects to them, including the Anvil Terrapin, the Misk Razor, and the Tumbrel Cyclone, as well as the Aegis Reclaimer. They have also been focusing on impact reworks for weapons such as the Gemini R97, the PRAR Distortion Scattergun, and Scourge Railgun. During their recent sprint, EU Gameplay Feature Team 1 completed all their new task work for the PMA VMA and are now in the process of bug fixing and polishing for inclusions in 3.1. Another big push for the next release was to replace the bespoke customization screen we currently have for Star Marine to bring it in line with the codebase already shared between Arena Commander and the loadout apps in Mobiglass. This will allow us to only update one single piece of code that is shared across all loadout customization screens. It's a big saving for code as we only need to fix a bug once rather than multiple times. This means that each interface for the players only need to learn a single system, so any user experience improvements will be felt on all loadout screens for the future. The appearance is admittedly still very rough, as we've been focusing our attention on making sure the code works correctly and that the functionality is not lost. In fact, switching to the new interface means that players can now mix and match light, medium, and heavy armor pieces individually. With the weight of armor playing a more important role, the stability for Star Marine players to customize various parts adds an extremely good level of strategy to the game. The codework for this functionality is now in place, so the UI team will begin updating the visuals and bringing the quality over the next week for 3.1. At the same time, the UI team is also hard at work on wider visual improvements to the Mobiglass app itself. Along with prototyping the new layout we showed a few weeks ago on ATV, we're also looking at ways to increase the visibility of Mobiglass in general. One of the big improvements we're hoping to achieve is for the Mobiglass to occupy more of the screen space in an effort to increase the legibility and clearly display the many visual elements. Finally, the team's looking to bring up the quality of the apps by adding additional improvements to the rendering rules and shaders applied to the 3D models, which should create a very good noticeable improvement to inventory management for 3.1. The tech art team in LA has been continuing to work on the character customizer. A new looping idle animation was chosen to provide some variation in body movement. Instead of a single deadpan facial animation, a selection of more expressive facial anims were implemented and randomized in Mannequin to bring more life to the character model. In addition, all selected options now have work in progress icons, with the technology needed to display preview icons for selectable items like skin tones and hair colors, which will now be complete. The final polished icons for each selection types are planned for the near future. Next, the non-head body parts had a specular highlight pass by the character team after the team decided that the heads needed a polish pass to match the rest of the body parts, as well as a lighting pass to add fidelity to the head detail. Another area of focus is the transition between the head and body textures. Previously, a visible seam was noticeable between the head and the torso, so the team worked on making the transition much smoother, thus removing the seam. We have also had significant improvements to the camera system. The field of view, camera position, and the depth of field parameters were adjusted to create a more dramatic presentation of the selection character in the environment. And finally, for this team, various issues with persistence, specifically saving and entering the PU, have been addressed. Some bugs popped up while working on the character customizer, like selecting items, saving, and then entering the PU. Other issues, such as quickly skipping through the selections or cancelling, were also discovered and addressed. Teams in Austin and Los Angeles have been working on the service beacon, which marks the beginning of the player-generated content. Although this is only the beginning, for 3.1, we're planning on allowing players to pay each other for services such as personal transport or combat assistance. Once a contract is accepted, quantum travel markers will be created on the contract initiator so the service provider can easily get to them. Both parties will be able to see where the other person is while the contract is active. Either party involved in the contract can cancel at any time, but be warned, you'll be able to rate the other person where contract completion is not easily determined. For instance, when does combat assistance end? We are close to finishing our second sprint on this feature. We're still trying to get the backend services for the system online, and we've been running into a few issues where the system is not yet communicating properly with the diffusion services that keep us multi-server and multi-thread safe. The character team spent some time fixing a few bugs that were preventing helmet lights from operating as expected. such as one example where lights persisted when you take off your helmet. The team has also been working on an annoying bug where players were able to wear their hats and helmets at the same time. That's it for this month's update for the work being done on the persistent universe. As always, thanks to our subscribers for sponsoring this and all of our shows. And of course, thank you to all our backers for continuing to support the development of both Star Citizen and Squadron 42. We'll see you next month.